it's time to break into some Forgeworld models for the Space Marine Force. Hello again and welcome back to Planet 40k, continuing on with our Space Marine reviews and tactics. This time we're going to be looking at one of the Forgeworld models from the Armour Compendium book. This one is going to be the Leviathan Dreadnought. So let's get stuck in straight into the datasheet then. It's going to be one of your elite options within your detachment, and it's coming in at 220 points or 13 power level. Now it isn't going to stay at 220 points if you're doing some upgrades, which we'll go over later in the video. So let's get on with the stat line for the model. It's got a movement of 8 inches, weapon skill 3+, ballistic skill 3+, strength 7, toughness 7, wounds 14, attacks 4, leadership 8 and a 2+ save. So a tidy little save there at a 2+ armor save. And with toughness 7, that makes it quite a resilient unit. It does obviously degrade because it's got 10 wounds or more, so the movement, the weapon skill and the ballistic skill will be affected, as you can see in the image. As for the actual abilities of the unit, it's got the Angels of Death ability, so it's going to have the following abilities: and Thou Shall Know Fear, Bolt to Discipline, Shock Assault and Combat Doctrines. Now, and Thou Shall Know No Fear and Bolt to Discipline aren't really going to have any effect whatsoever with this model. However, Shock Assault getting an additional attack in the first round of combat, and of course Combat Doctrines getting an extra bit of AP, depending on what doctrine you're in for that particular battle round. It's then got Martial Legacy, which isn't actually a good thing. It means that if you're taking a Battle Forged army, and you're including this Dreadnought within the detachment, it's going to cost you an additional CP. So it's effectively like taking a Super Auxiliary detachment, except this isn't a Lord of War model, it's taken up an elite slot as well. So a little bit of a nerf there to start us off with. It's then got Duty Eternal due to the fact that it's a Dreadnought, so any damage taken it's going to be a -1 to every single damage roll. It's got the Atomantic Shielding, which is simply a 5+ invulnerable save, so when you add that on top of its 2+ armor save and toughness 7, that adds even more resiliency to the Dreadnought. And of course it's going to explode because it's a vehicle. On a roll of a 6 when it's destroyed, units within 6 inches are suffering D3 mortal wounds. So an average explosion there, nothing too drastic. As for the actual keywords, it basically has the chapter keyword, so it's going in any chapter. Then as for the standard keywords, it's a vehicle, it's a Dreadnought, it's got the smokescreen keyword, it's got the relic keyword, and of course the Leviathan Dreadnought. So some of those are going to interact with stratagems and buffs, which we'll go over later in the video. So let's get on with the actual war gear, which comes stock with the Leviathan Dreadnought. So it comes with 2 heavy flamers and 2 Gravflux bombards. Let's go over those weapons before we begin with the actual war gear options. The heavy flamers are quite standard, 12-inch range, heavy D6, strength 5, -1 AP and 1 damage, and of course they auto hit. Now you've got 2 of these, so it's effectively heavy 2d6, and in the first battle round, which will be the Devastator Doctrine, the AP will go up to -2 AP, although you're not very likely to be within 12-inch range in the first battle round, maybe if you go second. You've also got the 2 Gravflux Bombards, which are a little bit better in terms of range. A 24-inch range, heavy 2d3, that's an average of 4 shots there if you're going by averages, strength 8, -3 AP and the damage is 2. It does have the blast keyword, and because it's a grab weapon, you're going to get a +1 to the damage if the enemy unit has a save characteristic of a 3 or better. That will turn the damage to a damage 3 weapon. So that blast keyword kind of makes it a little bit of an annoyance if you get tagged in combat, because you can't be actually firing it into combat. However, it will give you the max shots at those horde units. Not too bad of a weapon, that one. As for the actual war gear, let's go through these 3 bullet points before we actually look at the stats. So the first one is each of the model's Gravflux Bombards can be replaced with one of the following. So you can either choose a Cyclonic Melter Lance, 1 Storm Cannon, 1 Melter Gun and a Leviathan Siege Claw, or a Melter Gun and a Leviathan Siege Drill. So that's the first bullet point there. The second bullet point is to swap out the 2 heavy flamers for 2 twin Volkite calibers, and then finally you can actually take 3 hunter killer missiles. So let's go through all those options, then work out which one's probably the best one for this unit. Taking a Cyclonic Melter Lance. So this has got an 18-inch range, heavy D6, strength 9, -4 AP and the damage of D6. It's a blast weapon, and if you're firing within half range, which will be 9 inches, the damage is D6 +2. It's going to cost you 20 points a pop, and you can take 2 of them. Now if you are taking 2 of them, you're averaging 7 shots there at strength 9, but it is also quite pricey at 20 points for each lance. And of course that blast ability could be a hindrance if you get tagged in combat, so you won't be firing it. That second option was to take a Storm Cannon or 2 Storm Cannons at 10 points each, 36-inch range, so this is a little bit of a better range now, heavy 8, strength 7, -1 AP, 2 damage. This one's more your anti-infantry weapon, pretty much going to be always wounded on 3s, and that damage too should be doing a bit of work on elite infantry models. You could opt to fire this at light vehicles, even standard vehicles at a toughness 7, toughness 6, but the damage being only 2 could slow you down a little bit there. There's actually 2 options within one here, so you get a melter gun and a Leviathan siege claw, so that goes on one arm there. The melter gun is just a straightforward 12-inch range, assault 1, strength 8, -4 AP, damage D6, or D6 plus 2 if you fire within 6 inches. Quite a standard weapon there. But the Leviathan siege claw is strength times 2, making it strength 14, -3 AP, and the damage is 3, and you get an additional attack with it. So your attacks characteristic will go up to 5 attacks, and then 6 of course with shock assault. Now you can take the same loadout except you change the siege claw with a siege drill. So this is again strength times 2, making it a strength 14 weapon. This time it's -4 AP and the damage is 2d3, which averages damage 4. However, if you're going against a vehicle model, then the damage will be a flat 6. So vehicle heavy lists, you definitely want to be taking your siege drill. Now of course you don't get the extra attack with this one as opposed to taking the siege claw, but the damage on average is a bit better. You've then got the option of removing those 2 heavy flamers, and you can instead take the 2 twin Volkite calibers. So let's go through those calibers. They are 30-inch range, heavy 4, strength 5, no AP, 2 damage. And if you're rolling on modified wound roll of a 6, it's going to inflict a mortal wound in addition to the normal damage. So you've got 2 of these, so that's going to be 8 shots there at strength 5. Whereas if you've got the 2 heavy flamers, you're averaging 7 shots. That auto hit with the potential of 12 shots, but also with the potential of 2 shots, I guess. But the damage with the heavy flamers is only 1, whereas this one, the damage is 2, and you've got the opportunity of inflicting mortal wounds. So I personally would go for the Volkite calibers over the heavy flamers, and the 30-inch range as well, so you could be firing these straight away right off the bat turn 1, because you should be in range with something. Then finally you can equip up to 3 hunter killer missiles, which are 5 points a pop. These are one use only weapons, but they're strength 10, -2 AP with the damage being D6, and they're 48-inch range. Again, you're going to be using them turn 1 in the Devastator Doctrine, so you're going to get a -3 AP with that. And with that 48-inch range, you're going to definitely be in range of something. If you're taking up to 3, I'd pop all 3 of them in the first battle round, hopefully doing some damage there. So yeah, out of all of the options, I do like the Cyclonic Melter Lance because there's a lot of melt shots there, but 20 points an arm could be quite pricey there. When you're talking about a 220 point Dreadnought anyway, the Storm Cannon could be an option because you're going to get 16 shots in total if you take 2 of those. Now you can mix and match some of these weapons, but I would want a melee weapon because if you do get caught in combat, you're only going to have a strength 7 at a base strength. There's no weapon there. I'd probably want to take either the Siege Claw or the Siege Drill on one of the arms with the Melter Gun, and that will probably be list dependent, depending on what you're going up against. If you're going up against a vehicle heavy list, of course you're going to take the Siege Drill. So I'll take the Melter Gun and the Siege as a base for one of the arms, so that's going to be a free upgrade, and for the other arm, I'm still a bit torn to be honest. I'm quite liking the look of that Melter Lance, but it's only 18-inch range. That's the problem with that Melter Lance. It's not got the biggest of ranges, so you're going to have to go quite close, and with the blast ability, so I'm not keen on that combination. So maybe the Gravflux Bombard could be the right option there. Or going with 2 arms with the Gravflux Bombards, keeping the 2 as the standard loadout. But again, that also has the blast ability, so it's a bit of an issue. You've got a better range this time at 24-inch range, so you can keep your distance if you need to. But I just don't think the Storm Cannon's worth it. You've got Redemptor Dreadnoughts as an example, have better weapons against anti-infantry, so bringing a 220 point model and spending more on the Storm Cannons just doesn't seem worth it to me. However, I would take the Hunter Killer Missiles. I think they are worth it, especially when you can get 3 of them. So let's move on to the stratagems that are available for the Leviathan Dreadnought. So you've got Armour of Contempt as always, a 5+ feel no pain save against mortal wounds, pretty standard. It's then got the option of having Wisdom of the Ancients for 1 command point. However, because it doesn't have the core keyword, it can't be used on itself, but it could be spreading the Captain's Rites of Battle aura or the Lieutenant's Tactical Precision aura to other nearby units. You've then got the Smokescreen stratagem available because it's got the Smokescreen keyword, which will make the Dreadnought a -1 to hit for enemy models. As for some unit synergy, you've got the Tech Marine of course, with the Blessing of the Omnisire ability. You could be healing D3 lost wounds each and every turn to your Dreadnought. And you can also be giving it a +1 to the attack hit rolls with Awaken the Machine Spirits. So that Dreadnought's going to be hitting on 2s with everything it's got. You can then upgrade your Tech Marine to a Master of the Forge. So when he's using the Blessing of the Omnisire ability, your Leviathan Dreadnought could be regaining 3 lost wounds as opposed to D3 lost wounds each and every turn. And if you also take the Warden of the Ancients, which is a Warlord trait specifically for the Master of the Forge, then while Chapter Dreadnoughts are within 6 inches of this Warlord, it's going to add 1 to the strength and attacks characteristics. So the strength will go up to strength 8 at a base value, and the attacks will go up to attacks 5. And of course with Shock Assault it will be 6, and potentially with the Siege Claw that makes 7. You could also opt for a Librarian. He can cast the Veil of Time, which allows the Leviathan Dreadnought to reroll the charge rolls. You can reroll the advanced rolls as well, but you're not going to be advancing with this thing unless you've got abilities that allow you to advance and still fire. And he also gets to fight first in the fight phase. As for some chapter synergy, the Archangels with Grim Resolve, so if it stayed stationary it's going to get a +1 to hit. And if you're playing Space Wolves, he can heroically intervene as if he was a character, and of course he's got quite a large base, so that's going to be quite a large footprint to be able to heroically intervene into. And in melee in the first battle round he's going to have a +1 to hit there too. As for Iron Hands, which is probably the best synergy out of all of the chapters, with the Flesh is Weak chapter tactic, he's got a 6+ Feel No Pain save. He's going to have double the amount of wounds for the characteristics of his datasheet, which means he's not going to be bracketed that easily. They've got Calculated Fury and the Devastator Doctrines, so he can simply reroll hit rolls of a 1 at range with heavy weapons. But the one I like in particular is March of the Ancients. It's 1 command point, you select an Iron Hands Dreadnought, and he gains the character keywords. Not only that, he gets an extra attack and an extra bit of leadership, which you can only use the stratagem once per battle. But what this actually means is now some of your characters can actually start buffing this Leviathan Dreadnought. For example, the Chaplain, some of the litanies buff character units. In fact, I'm going to leave a link at the end of the video, which will take you to our Primaris Chaplain review, so check that one out after the video. And the Librarian, for example, using the Might of Heroes psychic ability, that works on characters as well. So now all of a sudden you can really be pimping out the Leviathan Dreadnought with additional characters. However, doing this does work better on other Dreadnoughts, such as an Ironclad Dreadnought for example, because they've got 9 wounds or less, so they can also benefit from the Lookout Sir ability, whereas the Leviathan Dreadnought's got 14 wounds, so it's not going to benefit. Sticking with the Iron Hands though, they've also got the Machine Empathy for 1 command point. So this one's actually for the Tet Marine, however there is synergy of course, so the Tet Marine is able to use the Blessing of the Omnissiah ability for a second time that turn. And if he is a Master of the Forge, it's going to be a flat 3 wounds returned. And then finally with the Iron Hands, they've got Wrathful Machine Spirit for 2 command points, so when in the shooting phase or the fight phase, an Iron Hands vehicle can reroll all the hit rolls. A few other chapters that are worth noting here: Ultramarines with their Codex Discipline, they can simply fall back and they're still eligible to fire, although it will be at a -1 to hit penalty. But that could be key, in particular with those blast weapons, because if you're in combat you cannot fire blast weapons into combat. Even if you're a monster, even if you're a vehicle, it's not going to work, so being able to fall back and still fire could be pretty key there. Salamanders have got loads of synergy, they've always got loads of synergy with Melters and Flamers in particular, and this unit is stacked with those kind of weapons. So they're of course getting to reroll a single wound roll, but they've got the Flamecraft stratagem for 2 command points. So instead of rolling for how many hits you're going to get with those flamers, you instantly get the maximum amount of attacks with them. They've then got the Fires of Battle stratagem for 1 command point, done in the shooting phase or your opponent's charge phase. When you're using a flame weapon or a melter weapon, when resolving an attack with that weapon, any unmodified wound rolls of a 4+ will make the target suffer a mortal wound in addition to the normal damage, to a maximum of 3 mortal wounds per stratagem. Then they've got the Relentless Determination stratagem for 1 command point, which effectively gives them double the amount of wounds on the damage table, very similar to Iron Hands there. So let's get on with the summary today, starting with the good. It's got 14 wounds with 2+ armor save, a 5+ invulnerable save, and Duty Eternal, which makes it very resilient, very tanky. It's going to be sticking around for a decent amount of time. It's got tons of weapon options for versatility. It's also a threat from any range and in melee as well. Because of the actual war gear options, you can get it out into any range, which is going to really suit your playstyle. So it's then going to also be able to target any types of units, whether it's horde units, whether it's elite infantry units, whether it's vehicles, it'll be able to deal with them. Then finally, there's plenty of synergy with some of the chapters. We've gone over some of them already. There's plenty others as well that you can take. For example, Blood Angels with the Red First getting a +1 to the charge roll and a +1 to the wound roll. But I think Iron Hands is probably the best one out of all the chapters in terms of synergy. As for the bad, it's quite pricey at 220 points. Then you've also got to pay for the actual upgrade options if you're taking upgrades. So that Melter Lance in particular, 20 points a hit, that could get quite expensive. Then that Martial Legacy ability, which effectively makes this a Lord of War unit, because it's going to be almost like taking a super heavy auxiliary detachment, because you need to pay 1 command point in order to field it. It's not core, which means it's going to lose out on a lot of potential buff mechanics from librarians, from chaplains, from captains, lieutenants. Again, this is why Iron Hands are quite a good synergy with this model, because you can use that stratagem to make your Leviathan Dreadnought a character model. But other than that, there's not really much else you can do, because there's no core keyword. You've also got to penalise the fact that a lot of the good weapons that are within the Leviathan Dreadnought's war gear are blast weapons, especially at the 18-inch range, which is not a great range when you've got the blast ability on top of it, because once you get tagged in combat you can't fire it. Then finally, there's lots of other competition in terms of other dreadnoughts. There's other Forgeworld dreadnoughts. Then in terms of the actual codex, there's the Redemptor Dreadnought, which is a very good anti-infantry dreadnought. You've got the Ironclad Dreadnought, which is a very good melee dreadnought. Even the standard Venerable Dreadnought is going to be a lot cheaper to field and still has a pretty decent damage output. So there's plenty of competition, and that's just the Dreadnoughts alone. There's other ones as well. On a smaller scale, you've got the ATB Invaders for the anti-infantry, things like that. So that's some of the bad points summed up for us. So before we do the rating, let's get the shout out of the day done, which is going to Martin Backlash the Methrit Pharaon for his comment relating to our bike review we did recently. That sounds like a Necron player to me, Martin, but I'm glad you're enjoying the Space Marine side of the channel. So let's get on with the Planet 40k rating. So a very good all-round Dreadnought. It does have competition, but I do think it's pretty decent. It's got quite a powerful punch in melee and at range, so I'm going to be giving this Leviathan Dreadnought a Planet 40k rating of 3.5 stars. So let me know if you agree with this rating, and also let me know what loadout you take. Quite a lot of different loadout options you could be taking. Maybe you're going completely ranged, maybe you're going melee, maybe you're going a bit of both. Let me know below. So remember, the best comment is going to be shouted out in the next Space Marine video. So guys, as promised, this is going to be the Primaris Chaplain review link for you, so click that one if you haven't seen that review yet. And also just sub if you are new. We have reached 4,000 subs, so we're now trying to get to 5,000 subs, so sub if you are new. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.